Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Have you recently found that you've been discarded by someone you suspect may be a sociopath or a narcissist or a psychopath? Are you feeling down and hurt? Well, I'm here tonight to tell you you should be rejoicing. Because if you're here, you probably came across some of the main characteristics these creatures display, and you may still be teetering between, was it you or was it really them? Well, I'm here to assure you it was them. They are the ones who insinuated their way into your life, fictitiously pretending to be like you to pull you in, which you later realized they were never ever anything like you. But it's hard for a regular person who's not used to such fakery to accept this, because normally when you meet somebody, you start building a file in your brain of the kind of person you've met from day one, and you start off this way, and they're like the childlike, vulnerable baby at first. Well, then you think, well, that's what they're like. But then later, they display behaviors of being an evil conqueror. And it's kind of hard for one who's not used to that to think, well, how could it be this vulnerable child and this conqueror? It just doesn't fit. Plus all the BS they told you, mirroring you to sound like they were just like you were. And you repeatedly discovered things they did that were nothing like things you would do. Well, the reason you should rejoice, especially if this person has replaced you with the next target, and more than likely you were the replacement of a previous target, you can rejoice knowing that that kind of life is all this person will ever have. They're basically a phony who pretends to be like everyone else that it's after, but can't really keep it going, can't really maintain it because it's fake. They don't know the first thing about being like whoever it is they're targeting, because they're an empty, hollow shell that only has very limited emotions such as greed, destruction, hatred, jealousy, and the need to conquer and control and have power. There is no compassion that's real. Now, they can fake it, but there's no real compassion, there's no real empathy, there's no shame, there's nothing that resembles a regular human being in them. One reason you should be rejoicing is that you know that this person will not ever change. Sure, they might change the game they play with the next target, but they're still the empty, hollow shell they were when you met them, and they will continue to try on this disguise and try on that disguise, never being genuine. And it may get them through for a while, and if they've got this new replacement and you're jealous of it, thinking, oh, that replacement's going to give this person what I couldn't. Oh, no. Well, guess what? That person may appear to be giving them this, but it's the same scenario, because you're dealing with a hollow human being. It's not like after they discarded you, all of a sudden they've become a real human being, capable of all the emotions that they didn't have before. No, they never had them. They faked it. You're lucky you didn't stick around with the person, because with that kind of person, there's no hope. And one of the main reasons there's no hope for them, which is a terrible thing to say, which we're not typically brought up to believe that anyone would be beyond repair or beyond help, but it's like those lessons you learn when you're trusting in your small town neighborhood and you leave your doors unlocked and leave money sticking out of your pocket. Well, when you go to a big city like New York City and your money's snatched and your hotel room is invaded because you left the door open, it's a whole different world. So you have to learn that, yes, in those circumstances like the New York City, you know to be cautious, to be extra protective. You may even feel paranoid, but it's much better to feel paranoid and protect your belongings rather than to be naive and learn the hard way. But with these monsters, they do not change, and there's a reason for this, which I believe is, if you notice, when you met them, they had problems in their life, more than likely, and when you questioned these problems, what did you hear? Like, let's just say they had financial troubles and horrible credit. So you may have asked, well, why is your credit so horrible? You probably heard a response that had something to do with an external source. Oh, well, I spent too much money of mine to help other people. That's why my bills weren't paid and my credit's bad. Phony. Well, that's just a hint of what I'm talking about. They don't see they've done anything wrong. Like when you dated them, for example, and they pretended to be the most loyal, faithful person, and then you discovered 6 other partners behind your back, well, you probably reacted in a poor way. You probably yelled, screamed, called them a name, did something which they labeled you as abusive for doing. You see, these people don't play on a level playing field. So they're likely to treat this relationship you had as if it's automatically legitimate, not counting the fact that they faked their way through the whole way, and just treating it like whatever happened that you did wrong was because you are the problem. You made the relationship go sour. You asked too many questions. You dared to spy on them and figure out what they were really doing, and they will honestly make it sound like you're at fault. Because you're sitting there thinking, wait a second, you faked your whole identity. Doesn't that play? And they don't even consider that, which is what's sick. They feel that whatever happened is not their fault, as if it's completely normal to go from date to date, pretending to be this person, pretending to be that person. That's what they do. And you have a different sense of morality, so you could sit there for 10 hours telling them how wrong it is for them to fake who they are just to get closer to somebody, and it will fall on deaf ears, because that's how they do it. They're not going to listen to you tell them what they've done is wrong, and if you try, they will tell you that you are insulting them and you think you're so much better, which is not the case. Especially, it's difficult for you, though, when you first met them and they spoke to you in a way that made you believe that they would believe what you were saying now would be accurate, but they don't. Now, if it's about somebody else, you're watching a movie and the main character is a man and he takes advantage of a poor woman character who is vulnerable, and he had ill intentions the whole time, and then she finds out and beats him up. Well, he might watch that movie, or she might watch that movie and say, well, that bad guy got what he deserved. He was tricking her. But then when the story changes and it's this person tricking you, it's a whole different story. Oh, I only tricked you because blah, blah, blah. Oh, you should have done this and shouldn't have done that. And they just don't have the ability to self-reflect and see that they may have done something wrong, and be sure with their next partner, the replacement, your replacement, they're probably telling how horrible you were. And of course, they won't say, oh, my ex called me these horrible names because he found out I had 6 other lovers behind his back. No, it'll just be, my ex was so abusive, he called me a this and a this and a this, and the new replacement might say, well, why would he do that? I don't know, he's crazy, will be the answer they'll get. And so they'll be like, oh, I don't like that ex of yours. And it'll be like a triangulation thing. That's why it's not advisable to approach the replacement with any type of information like, hey, you're with the wrong person, because you'll just look like the jealous, evil, abusive ex, which is probably the role you've been painted into anyway, so it's best just to let it go. But eventually you'll learn that this person you thought you had so much in common with really doesn't have anything in common with you at all. And it was all a clever ruse, and it was not real at all. So be glad that somebody else is having to deal with this now, even though it may not be apparent yet. Just think about your own situation. After the first week, did you know you were with a fake? You may have suspected it. You may have even said, like I've done in a few cases, like, you're being awfully nice. Are you sure this is real? Are you up to something? Of course the answer will be, no, this is just how I am. Yet you compare that with the evil, callous, hateful way they are later and think, no, that wasn't how you are. But then they're likely to blame you. Well, you're the reason why I stopped being so nice. But why? Because I discovered you were a phony? There's no logic there, you see. So you're dealing with this creature who thinks whatever it does is right, even if it involves scamming and impersonation of someone else. It's you who are at fault. You who asked too many questions. You who dared to check up on them and found out that they had other lovers. Be glad you're away from that. Another fear you may have is that you may think that during all your attempts at making things right with this person, you might fear that, oh no, this person's going to take all my suggestions and make this next relationship work successfully. No, they're not. If anything, they'll use your suggestions to impersonate a real human being to the new person, but they're not going to click and all of a sudden become a regular person. It just does not happen with these types. And an example I can think of that was when I was really young, I was involved with this person who was kind of a whore, but I figured, well, we can date and that'll stop. Well, of course it didn't. And I developed like an inferiority complex because I didn't realize the extent of this person's whoredom. I would think, like, why would this person run off with someone else after we just spent the whole weekend together? And I would start to think, well, maybe I'm just not satisfying enough. Well, when it all ended and I saw it for what it wasn't long before it had a new person and started eventually calling me, saying, hey, baby, want to come over? It wanted to do the filthy stuff. And I'm thinking, it wasn't me. This person does this to everybody. And I felt a feeling of happiness thinking, I'm glad it wasn't me because it's got somebody else now. It's doing the same old crap. And they will do the same old crap as long as they can get away with it. So again, if you got out of it and you're still alive, rejoice.
I am the Narcopath, and I wear a mask.
I am the Narcopath. If you want to see me nude in Playboy, check out your new gun. I've got more than 3 breaths.
My biological clock is ticking.
I am the Narcopath, and I saved a little souvenir from the last time we spoke. I didn't return your calls when you finally came to your senses. I found somebody else. Besides, you and I were never compatible. Oh, I know I begged you to not leave me that one time, but that was just a smokescreen because I didn't have anybody else. You know I can't be alone. I've got to have somebody with me at all times. So if you and I were dating and we weren't getting along so well, and I still chose to hang in there, well, there's a clue for you, sweetie.
You better believe I was looking. I was looking for a new one, but you had too much money. You had a nice swimming pool. So I figured, well, I'll just keep on going through with this until I find someone else, which I finally did. But I do miss your swimming pool.
Oh, and one more thing. I heard it through the rotten grapevine that you just couldn't understand after all our talk about how when
Your ex cheated on you. I promised you I would never do such a thing, and I never have. Only for you to find out later that I was actually screwing the entire high school football team. And you just couldn't comprehend that? Well, honey, let me break it down for you.
Hi. So nice to see you. Oh, hold on. Hello? Who? Sandy who? Sandy Hook? I'm sorry, she ain't available. Oh, I can't take that.